guys. I feel a bit neglected after that, eh? Can I get something to cheer me up? Come on, please. 99% is quite an interesting number because there's not a lot of ideas out there that if you go and interview the world's population, they'll say it's a good idea. There's usually some kind of discrepancy. So if you go and talk to 99% of doctors and they say this is a good idea, it's a good idea. Talk to 99% of psychologists, it's a good idea. 99% of anyone, rural people, anyone, say this is a good idea. Lawyers, okay, maybe not lawyers, but pretty much everybody. And the solution is planting our own food. It's not rocket science, which is why when you said you didn't understand it when I told you about it, I was a bit concerned, so I'll try and explain it for you. You put a seed into an earth, you put some water on it. So we started an idea called Planting Season, and it was very simple. It cost us nothing to set up. We said, why don't we get as many people in South Africa as possible to pledge to plant a seed on a particular day? And that day was on the 22nd of September. So we decided, okay, cool, let's put this together. Got a collaboration of businesses together, which is part of what I do, and got them to start promoting it to their databases. That's all, just one email went out. After about 2.5 months, I think, on the 22nd of September, we had 22,000 people had registered on the website. But the interesting is there were 450 companies that had registered on the site. Okay, which is a beautiful statistic because out of those 450, many of them were schools and churches and other companies and other organizations. So we had about 100,000 people plant a seed on the 22nd of September. So the feeling is that, okay, this is interesting. The next one's going to be on March the 20th, and our goal is to get to 1 million people. Now, why am I so passionate about this? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but let me just tell you some cool, interesting stuff. First of all, marketing this thing. We talked about the connections just now. The connections were so amazing because we have 150 websites around the country, companies, et cetera, bloggers, whatever, who have put our Planting Season banner on their website. Now, I don't think it's ever been done before in South Africa's history, 150 people promoting a particular cause for this country. And this is just the beginning. We haven't even launched Planting Season 2 yet. We've already got over 500 companies and 25,000 people registered on the site. So you can imagine where we're starting to go with this. So there's some exciting things. Now, what's interesting is that the viral component is what made this work. 80% of our database comes from viral. It was absolutely incredible. We just see people registering. You'd come and just people were just referring friends. It was just amazing. Sometimes 200 or 300 a day were coming in. And it was incredible because there's something that's connecting us all. And you know, I can talk about the benefits of planting our own food, but we're all pretty intelligent people, I think. So if you just go to Google, I think you'll figure them out. But there's something very interesting about planting our own food. And that is it starts to reconnect you with the world. What do I mean by this? When you start planting your own food, you start to say, hang on a second, how do I start to do this? You have questions. You have questions about nature. You start talking to your family in a different way. You resonate with your neighbors in a different way. You start talking to people differently. You start asking questions about the food that you're eating. You start asking questions about the water that you're putting onto your garden. You start asking questions about, hang on a second, what's going on? Is that good enough for my plant? And the profound effects, I'm not a psychologist. I've got a marketing degree, so that pretty much disqualifies me from anything, from an academic perspective. But I'm no psychologist, but that's quite an important thing, isn't it? From a social perspective, it gets people talking. Suddenly, the gardener who you looked at and said, oh, this is just some guy who comes every sort of Friday to stare at me while I'm getting changed, sneaking through the window. Suddenly, this guy's a very interesting human being that you can start talking to and learning from. And it starts to connect with people that you might not normally connect with. And that's an amazing thing. And things start happening. The connections of nature start to happen. You start to say, we talked about dung beetles. It starts to bring more beetles. It starts to bring more insects. We talked about insects. It starts to bring more life into suburbia. More animals, more birds. And it's an incredible thing. And I envision a day where 1 million South Africans are planting. Within months, we won't be walking through just streets anymore. We'll be walking through food forests. Yeah, you laugh, but is it a bad thing? Is it a good idea? Yeah, exactly. So 1 million people are going to be doing this. 1 million people happen. So you ask 99% of the world's population, this country, and the country's population say that planting our own food is a good idea. So that just leaves one question. Why the fuck aren't we doing it? Thank you very much.